I didn't even want to go to the gala that night. The invitation had been sitting on our kitchen counter for weeks, a white envelope with gold trim that looked more like a wedding invite than a charity event. It was for some fundraiser tied to Kelly's firm, the Winter Soiree, hosted at one of those country clubs where people pretended to be humble while sipping $15 glasses of wine. I would have rather stayed home in sweats watching the game, but Kelly had already RSVP'd yes +1, before even asking me. "It's for a good cause," she said that morning, breezing past me on the way to grab her coat. "You can manage one evening of polite conversation, can't you?" That was Kelly. Everything about her was effortless. Her appearance, her confidence, her way of dismissing my hesitation like it was a minor inconvenience she could solve with a sharp smile and a little guilt. I used to admire that about her. Lately, it felt more like walking on eggshells. Still, I went. Like always. We arrived around 7. She was in this slate blue dress that shimmered under the streetlights, her hair pulled back just enough to look elegant without trying too hard. Heads turned when she stepped out of the car. Mine didn't. Not because she wasn't beautiful. She absolutely was. But because I'd seen that look on her before. That mask. It wasn't for me. I followed her through the front doors of the club, the kind of place where the floorboards didn't creak and everyone's laugh sounded just a little too polished. She headed straight toward the hostess table to check us in. I hung back, my coat still on, a little out of place like I always felt at these things. "Sir, would you like me to take your coat?" The attendant, maybe 20 years old, stood behind a polished wood counter, holding out a ticket stub. "Yeah," I mumbled, slipping it off. That's when I saw it. Kelly's phone. It was lying on the edge of the hostess table where she'd just signed us in. Screen up. Unlocked. A notification lit up, bright against the dark background. Just one line. "I'm waiting by the service exit. No one will notice." Time slowed. I don't know how else to describe it. My mind did this half-skip, like a scratched CD, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. My first thought was that it wasn't hers, but I recognized the lock screen photo. It was one of those scenic sh*ts she'd taken in Napa last year, back when we were still trying, still pretending. I hesitated. Maybe 2 seconds, maybe 5. Not long. I wasn't snooping. The screen had lit up right in front of me, like a slap across the face. I picked it up. "Kelly?" I called, walking over. She turned, halfway through air-kissing some finance guy whose name I didn't know and probably never would. "You left your phone." She took it from my hand, smooth as ever, and dropped it into her clutch without even checking the screen. Then her eyes narrowed. "You're reading my messages now?" My chest tightened. "What?" "No. It was just your screen lit up." She tilted her head slightly, the way she always did when she was about to twist something around on me. "Well, maybe you should stop acting like a cop every time I get a text," she said, her voice just low enough to sound private but sharp enough to sting. "It's exhausting, Ryan." And just like that, the moment was gone. Or rather, buried. Under a tone she knew would shut me down. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That the message looked suspicious? That it made my stomach turn? She turned back to her conversation, laughing a second later like nothing had happened. But something had. Back at our table, I sat down slowly, my wine untouched in front of me. The room was warm, full of string quartet music and forced laughter. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. I'd been really trying to ignore the signs. For months. Little things that didn't make sense on their own but added up in all the wrong ways. Her phone always face down. Calls she'd step outside to take. Evenings she'd come home late from client dinners, smelling faintly of cologne I didn't wear. And the jewelry, God, the jewelry. She showed up one weekend with a pair of earrings that still had the luxury boutique tag on them. When I asked, she shrugged and said it was a discount through a friend in wholesale. I didn't ask more. That's on me. Another time, she said she had a business dinner in Midtown, but when I opened the phone location tracker the next day, mostly out of habit, not suspicion, it showed her parked in a suburban neighborhood miles out of the city. She said the app must have glitched. "It happens," she insisted. "You should update the software." That was months ago. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. Now, sitting there while she mingled with people she barely tolerated, the weight of all those half-truths started pressing down at once. I watched her laugh at some joke across the table, the same laugh she used when she wanted people to feel like they were clever. She didn't look at me once. Did she even care if I was there? Eventually, I excused myself, needing air. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just disconnected. Like I was watching a version of my life play out from the outside. I stepped into one of the back hallways, away from the crowd. It was dimly lit, quiet. As I passed a partially open door near the garden exit, something stopped me. Voices. Familiar. I turned, just enough to glance through the crack. There she was, Kelly, pressed close to a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark suit, confident posture. Her hands were resting gently on his chest, not in a clumsy or surprised way, but like they'd been there before. He leaned in slightly, and she tilted her head up. Their faces were inches apart. She whispered something I couldn't hear. He smiled. Then he placed his hand on her waist. Not professionally, not platonically, and mately. I backed away, slowly, quietly, not because I was afraid of being caught, but because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I'd seen. I returned to the ballroom, sat back down, and signaled the waiter for another glass of wine. A few minutes later, Kelly reappeared, her expression bright and untouched, as if she'd just come from a friendly conversation about architecture or wine pairings. She didn't acknowledge me. Instead, she slipped effortlessly back into the crowd, laughing, smiling. A polished performance, like the message never came, like the side room never happened, like I didn't exist. The rest of the evening blurred. I sat there like a statue while Kelly floated through the room as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't just seen her pressed up against another man, like they were sharing a secret they never intended me to know. She didn't even glance my way. Not once. Instead, she gave her attention to everyone else. People she barely tolerated, co-workers she only spoke kindly about when they were in *T. She did that thing where she tilted her head just enough to seem interested, let out these perfectly timed laughs that made her seem charming and effortless. If I didn't know better, I would have believed she was having the night of her life. And maybe she was. I watched her sip champagne and touch arms when she talked. I studied the way her eyes scanned the room, how calculated every move was. She knew how to keep people looking in the direction she wanted, always somewhere else. Me? I might as well have been furniture. I tried to focus on anything else. The music, the conversation at the table. But my mind kept dragging me back. To that message, to that hallway, to that man. Who was he? A coworker? A client? Some guy she'd met at one of those networking events she started attending again? It didn't matter. I'd seen enough. My stomach was tight, but my face stayed neutral. I wasn't going to cause a scene. I wasn't going to give her, or anyone in that room, the satisfaction of watching me unravel. Eventually, I stood up and excused myself from the table. Someone asked if I was heading to the bar. I nodded. Didn't matter. I needed space. I walked past the dance floor and through a side door that led to the back garden. A quiet, neatly trimmed patio with low lighting and a trickling fountain that was trying too hard to be romantic. It was empty except for one person. Ryan? The voice stopped me mid-step. I turned to see a familiar face, Jenna. We hadn't seen each other in at least a year. She was an old friend of mine, someone I'd known before Kelly, back when things were simpler. She had always been easy to talk to, the kind of person who actually listened instead of waiting for their turn to speak. She smiled. Didn't expect to see you here. Yeah, same. We chatted for a few minutes. Nothing heavy, just catching up. She was working for a nonprofit now, doing something with housing initiatives. Her hair was shorter, her voice exactly the same. I didn't realize how much I missed normal conversation until I was standing there having one. Want to walk a bit? She asked, motioning toward the path that wrapped around the garden. It's a little loud in there. I nodded. That sounds good. We started walking slowly, just two people escaping the crowd. Nothing more. But as soon as we rounded the corner, I heard heels clicking fast behind us. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. Kelly. Ryan. she called, her voice sharper than usual. Not angry, not surprised, just alarmed. I turned around as she caught up, her eyes flicking from me to Jenna and back again. I didn't realize you'd stepped out, she said. Her tone was casual. Too casual. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice even. Just needed some air. There was a pause. Her eyes stayed on Jenna. Oh, Kelly said finally. Didn't know you two knew each other. We go way back, Jenna said, her smile polite but not overly friendly. She was reading the tension, probably better than I could. Kelly shifted her weight slightly, trying to get her footing. I'd seen this before, the moment she realized she wasn't holding the reins. And she hated it. Well, she said, we were about to announce the auction items soon. She glanced at me again. You're going to miss it. I'm okay, I said. You go ahead. That stopped her. Just for a second. Kelly wasn't used to me choosing someone else's company over hers. Not publicly, anyway. She was used to being the one in control, setting the pace. If I wandered too far emotionally, she knew exactly how to pull me back. But tonight was different. She stood there, looking at me like she was calculating something. Not hurt, not sad, just recalibrating. She nodded slowly, then turned around and walked back into the building. No goodbye, no parting smile, just retreat. Jenna and I stood there for a moment longer before she let out a breath. Well, she said, that wasn't awkward at all. I couldn't help but laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it felt good to let something out. We walked a little further, talking about old memories, people we'd both lost touch with, the way life seemed to speed up after 30. I didn't tell her what I'd seen earlier. I didn't tell her about the message, the hallway, the hand on the waist. I wasn't ready to speak those words out loud. But I think she could sense it anyway. Are you okay? She asked finally. I looked down at the gravel path beneath my feet. I don't know, I said honestly, but I will be. It wasn't revenge that made me walk away with Jenna. It wasn't about making Kelly jealous. It was about something much simpler. I was tired of being the only one in my marriage trying to preserve the illusion. Tired of gaslighting myself into thinking her behavior was just stress, or work, or temporary distance. No, this was the moment I stopped pretending. When I returned home later that night, Kelly didn't say a word. She went straight to the bedroom, kicked off her shoes, and started checking her phone. I watched her from the hallway, the glow of the screen lighting up her face like it was the only thing that mattered. I didn't ask her who she was texting. I already knew. The following morning, I woke up before my alarm. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling like it might have something to say. Something I hadn't already thought 1,000 times. Kelly was already gone. No note. No, had to leave early. Just gone. Typical. I got out of bed slowly, body heavy, mind heavier. Made coffee, stood in the kitchen holding the mug like it might ground me. My phone buzzed. Group text from work. Monday meeting moved to 10. I responded with a thumbs up and set the phone back down. Kelly's side of the bed still looked slept in, but barely. The covers weren't disturbed, like she'd only lain there for a moment before getting up again. I walked over and sat on the edge. Her perfume was still faint in the air, the one she never wore around me anymore. The expensive one she claimed she got on clearance. A lie disguised as thrift. I wasn't sure when it had become normal, this feeling of not knowing who I was sharing a life with. It had crept in slowly, like water under a door, seeping through the cracks until one day I realized the floor beneath me was soaked and rotting. And somehow I was still standing there, pretending everything was fine. I started replaying the night at the gala in my head, frame by frame. The message, the hallway, her face when she saw me with Jenna, her immediate pivot like she'd rehearsed it, like she'd always known how to spin things in a way that made her the victim, and me the villain. It wasn't just gaslighting, it was strategy. I opened the drawer in our shared dresser, the one she usually kept locked. Not with a key, just emotionally. She'd started keeping her things in there sometime last year. You have too many socks, she joked. Let me claim a drawer before you take over the whole room. It had seemed harmless. Inside, I found a velvet jewelry box. New. Not one of the old ones from before, this was recent. I opened it. A necklace I'd never seen before, elegant and expensive looking. And earrings that matched. Definitely not discount boutique quality. My first thought was, who gave these to her? Second thought, does it matter? I stood there for a long moment, staring at the items like they might give me answers. Then I closed the box and put it back exactly how I found it. Carefully, quietly, like I didn't want to wake the truth. But the truth was already awake. I went about the day like I was supposed to. Showered, went to work, sat through meetings where I nodded at the right times and contributed just enough to stay invisible. People joked, sent memes, shared lunch orders. Meanwhile, my mind stayed locked in that hallway, that hand on her waist. Around noon, I found myself pulling up my old cloud backups. Years ago, Kelly and I had set up location sharing, back when that kind of thing was cute. Back when we actually wanted to know where the other person was. The feature was still on, but now I noticed that she'd restricted access on hers. I couldn't see her movements anymore, just a gray placeholder where her location used to be. A ghost. But I could still see old data, records, pings, and I noticed something. There were patterns. Wednesday evenings. Downtown, same 3-block radius. Sunday mornings. An apartment complex 20 minutes from her supposed book club. And Thursdays, always a few hours unaccounted for. I went cold. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being realistic, observant, honest finally. The version of me that used to make excuses for her was gone. I didn't miss him. After work, I didn't go straight home. I needed a breather, so I parked near a cafe I used to visit during law school. Sat outside with a black coffee and my thoughts. I watched couples walk by. Real ones. Maybe. They looked real, at least. One woman rested her head on her partner's shoulder while laughing about something he'd said. They weren't glamorous. Just connected. I used to have that. At least I thought I did. That night, back at the house, Kelly walked in around 8:45, later than usual. She dropped her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door like she always did, removed her heels at the entrance, slid her phone into her purse and left it there. Long day, I asked from the living room. She flinched, clearly not expecting me to be home already. Yeah, she said after a pause. Client meeting ran over. We're launching a new campaign. I nodded. Sounds important. She didn't respond. Just walked into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. Not a word about the gala. Not about Jenna. Nothing. I waited. She leaned against the counter, scrolling through something on her phone now, even though I just watched her put it away. So she had 2 phones now? Was that what this was? You know, I said quietly. You used to tell me about your day. She looked up, face blank. What's that supposed to mean? Just what I said. Kelly crossed her arms. You're trying to start something. I'm trying to have a conversation. Well, maybe pick a better time. I stood, walked slowly into the kitchen. Not angry, not emotional, just done. I saw you, Kelly, at the gala. She froze. I saw the message, the phone. And I saw you in that side room. I held her gaze. With him. There it was. That flicker, the briefest flash of panic before the mask returned. You misunderstood, she said, eyes narrowing. Did I? She took a breath. Composed. It wasn't what it looked like. I laughed once, sharp and quiet. Every cheater in every movie says that. You really want to use the cliché? Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see the wheels turning. There was no apology coming. No explanation. Just spin. You're being paranoid, she said finally. No, I said, stepping back. I'm being observant. Big difference. Silence stretched between us. The clock on the microwave blinked 9:02. Kelly stepped forward slightly, her tone shifting into something softer. Ryan, look, you've been distant for months. You barely talk to me. You bury yourself in work and expect me to fill the silence. There it was, the pivot, turning the blame around. I've been distant, I repeated. She nodded. I'm not saying it's all your fault, but relationships take two people, and I felt alone for a long time. I leaned back against the counter. So you decided to fix that by sneaking around behind my back? She looked away. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. She didn't reply, just stood there, one hand resting lightly on the counter, the other still holding her wine glass like it was some kind of emotional shield. I let the silence hang. I wanted her to feel it, to hear what it sounded like when I stopped filling the air for her. Finally, I said, "We're going to need to talk about what comes next." Her eyes **T up. "Wait, you're not seriously. We're done pretending," I said, cutting her off. "No more half-truths. No more scripts. If you want to say something real, now's your chance." But she didn't. She just stood there, staring at me like she couldn't recognize the man in front of her. Good, because I wasn't the man who used to believe her anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed with my back to her, eyes wide open, counting the seconds between the soft ticks of the hallway clock. Every now and then, I could hear Kelly shifting beside me, restless under the weight of everything left unsaid. We didn't speak a word after that conversation in the kitchen. She went upstairs without a fight, without denial, without a real apology. She didn't even ask what I planned to do next. Like she already knew. Like she knew it was out of her hands now. When I finally got up in the morning, the first thing I noticed was that she was already gone again. Just like the day before. And maybe that was for the best. I made coffee, showered, and dressed with slow purpose. There was no rush. I wasn't headed to the office. I called in and told them I needed the day, personal matters. They didn't ask. I think they heard something in my voice that said, "Don't press." I wasn't even sure what I was planning at first. Not exactly. But I knew I couldn't sit around the house playing detective anymore. I needed something real, concrete. So I drove. Not aimlessly. I knew where I was going. The building was an apartment complex, tucked between a high-end gym and a dry cleaner. I'd been here before. Not personally, but I'd seen it in her location data more times than I could count. Always Thursdays. Occasionally Sunday mornings. Never mentioned in passing. I parked across the street and waited. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. Just seeing it, the place where she disappeared when I thought she was at meetings or brunch, was enough to make my stomach turn. I watched people come and go for a while. A guy with a gym bag, a woman juggling groceries and her phone. And then, a familiar car pulled into the lot. Her car. I ducked lower in my seat, pulse rising. She stepped out, looked around, and headed straight inside, holding a pastry bag and a takeaway coffee tray. Like she was bringing someone breakfast. Like this was routine. It wasn't just betrayal. It was normal for her now. That's what hit me. This wasn't a fling. This was established. This had rhythm, ritual, a life outside our life. And she was slipping between them like it was just a matter of wardrobe changes. I waited about 10 minutes, then left. I didn't need to catch her in the act. I already had. I just wanted the truth to slap me one more time, up close, so I'd stop doubting what I knew in my gut. Back at the house, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. It was one thing to suspect, to guess, to connect dots in your head. But it was another thing entirely to look at the map and realize you weren't even on it anymore. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and started researching. Lawyers, mostly. I wasn't looking for the cheapest or the friendliest. I wanted someone sharp, direct, someone who didn't blink when they heard words like infidelity or asset division. By 4, I had 3 consultations booked for the week. I didn't feel good about it, but I felt clear. And clarity is a kind of power, especially when you've been living in fog for months. When Kelly got home that night, I was already seated in the living room, lights low, no TV on. She stepped in, saw me, and froze. "You're home early," she said. "So are you." We stared at each other across the room. She broke the silence first. "Are we doing this again?" "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just sitting here." She sighed. "You've been in a mood ever since the gala." I laughed under my breath. Yeah, that's what it was. a mood. I told you it wasn't what it looked like, she said. And if you'd just give me a chance to. Don't, I said, holding up a hand. Don't start talking about what I think I saw. I've had enough of that game. Her jaw clenched. So what now, Ryan? You want to fight? You want me to admit something I didn't do? I want you to stop lying, I said flatly. I'm not lying. Then who lives at 821 Crossfield? And why do you spend every Thursday there? She went pale. That was it. No more words needed. I stood slowly, every inch of me calm. Not angry, not loud, just done. You're having an affair, Kelly. And whether you want to say it out loud or not, we both know it's true. She didn't deny it, didn't argue. She just looked away. And that silence, that cowardly silence, was louder than anything she could have said. I talked to a lawyer today, I added. I haven't signed anything yet, but I will. That got her attention. She looked at me then, not with guilt, not with sadness, but with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. What are you doing? She asked, stepping forward. You're throwing away everything we built? I laughed once, bitter and tired. You threw it away months ago. Her voice sharpened. So that's it? After all these years, you're just done? No, I said. I was done the moment you looked me in the face and blamed me for your lies. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked past her, grabbed my keys and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I ended up driving out of the city, onto one of those winding back roads that eventually turns into dark stretches of trees and old gas stations. I parked off the shoulder and sat in the car, windows down, wind cutting through like a confession. I thought about the beginning, the real beginning. Kelly and I had met through mutual friends. I was still in grad school, she was already deep into her career. She had this drive, this sharpness, this clarity that pulled people in. I admired her for it. And somewhere along the way, that admiration turned into dependency. I let her make the plans. I let her lead. I trusted her with the map, assuming we were both headed to the same place. Turns out she'd been drawing two maps the whole time. And now I was the one holding the wrong one, wondering how I got here. I sat there for hours thinking, not about her, about me, who I used to be, who I'd become, who I was going to have to become next. When I got back home, it was almost midnight. The lights were off, and the house was quiet. Kelly had gone to bed. I didn't check which room. I just went into the guest room, closed the door behind me, and laid down on the bed. Tomorrow would be the start of something new. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be clean. But it would be mine. The next morning, I didn't get up early. I didn't need to. There was no meeting to rush to, no schedule demanding my attention. Just me, in the quiet guest room, sunlight bleeding in through the cheap blinds we never bothered to replace. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel rushed. Just still. I stayed in bed until I heard Kelly moving around in the hallway. Her steps were sharp, methodical, like someone staging calm but walking on glass. She wasn't used to not knowing what came next. That was my role, the one I'd played for years, the one who reacted, who chased her moods, who recalibrated every time she shifted the goalposts. Not anymore. I didn't bother going down for breakfast. I heard the front door close around 8:10. She was gone, probably assuming I'd take another day off or avoid her entirely. And maybe that's what she wanted, distance, so she could work on a new narrative to present later. Some mix of guilt and misdirection that would keep me on the hook a little longer. But I wasn't on the hook. I was already gone. I got up, showered, and went to the lawyer's office for the first consultation. Her name was Melissa Granger, and from the second I shook her hand, I could tell she was the right one. She didn't waste time on sympathy or sugarcoating. She laid it out straight. What I needed, what I should expect, and what documentation we'd need to make everything airtight. Is she likely to contest the divorce? Melissa asked, tapping her pen against the edge of her legal pad. I shrugged. She might, but I don't think she wants this getting messy. Her image matters more than I do at this point. Melissa nodded, scribbling something down. Then we'll be strategic. Fast. Clean. I liked that. I liked the way she said we, like I wasn't going through this alone. By noon, I'd signed the first round of paperwork and was handed a checklist. Financials, shared assets, insurance accounts, property titles. Everything that tied Kelly and me together on paper. It was longer than I expected. We'd built a life after all. But what struck me was how easy it was to start unbuilding it. All it took was signatures and itemized lists. On my way back home, I stopped at a diner. Not one of the trendy ones we used to go to with friends, but one of those old-school places with cracked booths and a waitress who calls you Han without thinking. I sat near the window, ordered black coffee and eggs, and just sat, breathing. I kept expecting to feel something more intense. Rage, panic, sadness. But what I felt was quiet, heavy but still. I was past the shock, past the self-gaslighting. I wasn't chasing explanations anymore. There was nothing she could say that would change what I saw, what I knew, what she did. And I think that scared her more than anything else. My silence. My lack of desperation. When I got home, her car was in the driveway. She was back early for once. I walked in through the side door and found her sitting at the kitchen table, still in her work clothes, sipping tea like it was just another afternoon. She looked up when she heard the door, eyes scanning my face. "I didn't think you'd be out," she said. "I had things to do." A pause. Then, "Like what?" I looked at her evenly. "Legal things." She didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. "So that's it?" she said after a moment. "We're just ending everything?" I didn't answer right away. I walked over, set my keys on the counter, and leaned back against the sink. "No," I said. "We're not ending anything. You did that a long time ago. I'm just catching up." She stared at me for a beat, then set the mug down. "Ryan, we've been through worse." "No," I said. "We haven't." She stood. "You think I planned this? That I meant to hurt you?" "I don't think you planned it," I said. "But I think you made choices, over and over. And I think you liked having both, your respectable life and your secret one. You didn't trip and fall into this, Kelly. You built it." She walked toward me slowly, not aggressive, not soft, just controlled, like someone still playing chess in her mind. "I was unhappy," she said. "I didn't know how to tell you that without breaking everything. So instead you broke me." Her expression cracked for the first time, a flash of regret, or maybe just the realization that the script wasn't working. "I'm not the only one who stopped trying," she said, voice low. "Maybe," I said, "but I didn't cheat." She looked down. That was the end of it. The last card she had. The last thing she could say that might have shifted the blame. "I'm seeing a therapist," she added, quieter now. "Started a few weeks ago." I blinked. "Before the gala?" She nodded. Of course. It made sense. She didn't come clean because she was sorry. She started seeing a therapist because she knew it would look good when the truth came out. Damage control. "I'm not doing this to punish you," I said. "I'm doing this to save myself." She opened her mouth like she wanted to protest, but nothing came out. I left her standing there and went upstairs to start boxing up some of my things. The office, the bookshelves, my drawer in the bathroom. I didn't take everything, just what mattered. Around 6, there was a knock on the door. Jenna. I wasn't surprised. I'd texted her earlier, asked if she'd mind grabbing coffee sometime this week. She showed up with a 6-pack and a takeout bag instead. "You sounded like you needed company," she said. We sat on the back porch, the sun dipping behind the trees, the evening air still clinging to summer even though fall was right around the corner. Jenna didn't ask for details. She didn't pry. She just listened, nodding quietly as I talked. I told her about the message, the hallway, the confrontation, the apartment, the lawyer. She didn't interrupt once. When I was done, she let out a slow breath and said, "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." "You don't deserve that kind of betrayal," she added. "No one does." I looked at her, eyes tired. "I let it go on too long." "That's not on you," she said. "You trusted her. That's what you were supposed to do." That stuck with me. Not because I hadn't heard it before, but because it sounded different coming from her. Someone who wasn't tangled up in the mess. Someone who remembered me before all this. We sat in silence for a while, beer bottles sweating on the railing, the sound of distant cars humming in the background. Eventually, she asked, "What comes next?" "Divorce," I said. "Lawyers, logistics, paperwork, and then, I don't know." She smiled softly. "Then you start over." "Not sure I remember how." "You will." She stood to leave a little later, and before walking out the door, she turned to me and said, "Ryan, whatever happens, don't let this make you smaller. Don't become afraid to trust again just because one person didn't deserve it." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll try." After she left, I went back inside. The house was quiet again. I expected to feel empty, but instead, I felt something else. A shift. Not closure. Not peace. Just emotion. Like the gears were finally turning again. Tomorrow, the paperwork would move forward. Kelly would get served. And the version of my life I'd clung to for too long would officially start coming apart. But for once, I didn't dread it. I welcomed it.